The person in the marriage, she needed to rehabilitate her image.
You and your brother both directly asked your dad not to marry Camilla.
Yes.
The gate stayed shut. No flashing cameras, no royal standard snapping in the wind, no crowd pressed against a barrier hoping for a wave. Just a narrow country road in Wiltshire, a row of hedges gone silver in the dark, and one house sitting quiet behind its trees like it was holding its breath. Inside a government office, miles away, a single document changed. A name was added. Another name joined it. And just like that, the house that Queen Camilla had held on to for nearly 30 years stopped being legally hers. She did not announce it. She did not stand at a podium. She did not release a statement through the palace press office. The most personal property in her life moved into other hands, and the public only found out because someone went digging through the land registry and noticed 2 new names where hers used to sit. Harry Lopes, Jake Irwin, one a son-in-law, one a financier, neither one the Queen of the United Kingdom. Hi viewers, before we go one step further, tell me honestly in the comments, if you had one private place in the whole world where you could finally stop performing, would you ever sign it away to someone else? Drop your answer below, because by the end of this story, you may understand exactly why she did. Because here is what makes this strange. Rich families transfer property all the time. Trusts, estate planning, tax structures. None of that is shocking on its own. What is shocking is the timing. Camilla held this exact house through her divorce, through her remarriage, through public hatred, through a coronation, through the death of Queen Elizabeth II. For decades, she would not let it go. And then, quietly, she did. The property is called Ray Mill House. She bought it in 1996, the year after her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles, for £850,000. It sits in the village of Lecoq, tucked into 12 acres of garden, 6 bedrooms, a pool, stables, a river running close by. She lived there for 7 years as a single woman before the crown ever fully claimed her. This was the one place she controlled, not the institution. Her. So the question is not really what she gave away. The question is what changed around her that made holding on suddenly feel like the riskier choice. And the answer starts with what King Charles III had already done to the house next door, and what the heir to the throne is reportedly preparing to do once he becomes king. The house was not sold like a normal property. It moved like a message. She went there to disappear, not to hide from the law, not to run from a scandal, to disappear from the watching. Because that is the part outsiders never fully grasp about life inside the monarchy. The watching never stops. Every coat is studied. Every glance is photographed. Every word is read 3 different ways by 3 different newspapers before lunch. At Ray Mill House, none of that reached her. Every senior royal keeps a private escape, a place where the crown loosens its grip. For Queen Elizabeth II, it was Balmoral in the Scottish Hills. For Charles, then Prince of Wales, it was Highgrove and its gardens. And for Camilla, it was this 6-bedroom house in Lecoq, the one she had chosen herself, paid for herself, and shaped herself. That detail matters more than it sounds. The palace can hand you titles. It can hand you jewels, carriages, staff, ceremony. But it hands all of that to you, which means it can decide how you use it. Ray Mill House came from outside that system. It was hers before she was Her Majesty. It was also the house where her real life happened. Her daughter, Laura Lopes, held her wedding reception there in 2006. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, grew up moving through its rooms. After Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022 and the entire nation went into mourning, it was reportedly to Ray Mill House that Camilla retreated to breathe.
I asked her last year if she would become a patron of the Society to formalise her role, because she'd been working with us for 2 years previous to that, since her mother died, in fact, of osteoporosis, and she saw her mother die of this dreadful disease.
And there is one small human detail that says everything. In 2025, at the Sandringham Flower Show, she talked about gardening there. She called it the best therapy in the world. She complained about the heat killing her flower beds. She said she was proud of her own vegetables. That is not a queen talking. That is a woman talking. So picture the weight of letting that go. The pressure in this story is not a villain. There is no single enemy plotting in a dark room. The pressure is the institution itself, patient, organized, absorbing everything it touches until even a quiet garden starts to feel like it belongs to the crown instead of the person. And then King Charles did something that changed what this house meant entirely. Because if Ray Mill House was only a peaceful private retreat, only a garden and a pool and a river. Then why did it suddenly need royal-level protection? The king reached for his own money, not the public purse, not taxpayer funds, his private fortune. In 2025, Charles III bought the property next door to Ray Mill House, a place known as the Old Mill, for £3 million paid out of his own pocket. On the surface, that reads like a love story. A husband spending millions just to keep his wife's view quiet and her gate undisturbed, and it genuinely may be exactly that, but look closer at why he did it. Reporting indicated the Old Mill could have been turned into a commercial site, specifically the kind of place that hosts weddings and events, with strangers, cars, and noise arriving right alongside the Queen's private sanctuary. The shared private lane suddenly looked like a vulnerability, so the king moved fast and bought the threat away. Watch the emotional turn here because it matters. First, Charles looks protective, loyal, a man guarding the one place his wife can be herself. That feeling is real, and you should let yourself feel it. But then a colder thought arrives. If the king had already spent £3 million to lock down the area around Ray Mill House, if the perimeter was already secured, then why, not long after, did the house itself get moved out of Camilla's direct personal ownership? He protected the outside. Someone still moved the inside. That is the contradiction this whole story turns on. Protection and fear can look identical on paper. A man buying the house next door to keep you safe, and a family quietly restructuring who legally owns your home, both can be acts of love. Both can also be signs that someone, somewhere, is preparing for a future they are afraid of.
That we can be back together.
With loving books.
And loving books.
Loving books.
And you're here on this historic visit, 250 years of our country.
In royal life, the paperwork rarely shouts. It does not have to. The deed is the message, and the message is written in names and signatures, not headlines. From a public relations standpoint, the official version is simple and clean. Long-term family financial planning, agreed years ago, nothing to see. And that explanation may be completely true. But the king protected the gate, and someone still moved the house. 2 new names appeared where the Queen's used to be. According to land registry documents first reported by the Mail, the registered owners of Ray Mill House are now Harry Lopes, Camilla's son-in-law, married to her daughter Laura, and a financier named Jake Irwin. The Queen's name was no longer the one on the title. Notice the careful word, transferred. Not sold in 48 hours, no matter how the headline screamed it. The reporting does not describe a frantic fire sale. It describes a quiet, deliberate handover of legal title, and the silence around it became louder than any palace statement could have been. Then came the detail that flips the entire story. GB News reported something the first wave of coverage missed. Harry Lopes and Jake Irwin appear to hold the property as trustees. That means they hold the legal title. Their names are on the document for registry purposes. But they are not the beneficial owners. The beneficial owner is the person who actually controls and benefits from the asset, even when someone else's name sits on the paperwork. In plain terms, Camilla likely still owns the heart of the house. She just no longer holds the legal title in her own name. That is the twist. Not a crime, not an offshore vault, not stolen money hidden behind shell companies. Something quieter and in its own way sharper, a trust structure, the same tool wealthy families use to decide who controls an asset across generations before anyone dies. And here the narrator has to be honest with you. This was not handed out in a palace briefing. It did not come from a royal spokesman walking up to a microphone. That is exactly the point. Briefings exist to explain things. This was built to pass quietly. The difference between those two things is the whole story. So if Camilla moved Ray Mill House toward her own children's side, toward Laura, toward Tom, this may not be a story about giving a house away at all. It may be a story about protecting it from something that has not happened yet. Because the transfer only fully makes sense when you set it beside one name that is not written anywhere on that deed. A name that does not need to be on paper to shape what comes next. William. He has not said a word about Ray Mill House. He does not have to. William, Prince of Wales, is not just the heir to the throne. He is the next operating system for the entire monarchy. And many royal watchers expect that system to run very differently from the one his father built. Leaner, more modern, less patient with arrangements that are hard to explain to a skeptical public. Understand what that means for a house in Wiltshire. Reporting and royal commentary have pointed to William's interest in tightening how royal property is handled, who lives where, who pays what, which homes the family holds, and how. None of that is aimed at Camilla by name, but reform does not need a name to land on someone. It just needs rules. And rules outlive the people who feel safe under the old ones. This is the emotional fault line of the whole story. To the public, modernization sounds responsible. Clean books, clear ownership, fewer murky favors. Who could argue against that? But inside a family, the same word feels different. Inside, modernization can feel like eviction wearing a nicer suit. A private retreat becomes a future headline. A quiet family deed becomes something a future king's advisors might one day question. So picture Camilla doing the math. Her husband sits on the throne now, and while he reigns, he can shield her. He bought the house next door to prove it. But Charles will not reign forever. And the man who comes after him may not feel the same instinct to protect the woman who became queen through one of the most divisive love stories in modern royal history. Place one more figure beside her, quietly. Catherine, Princess of Wales. Not as a rival in some cheap tabloid catfight, that is lazy storytelling. Place her as a contrast. Catherine is the future queen the public already adores, the picture of duty and stability, and the clean modern monarchy to come. Camilla is the present queen carrying a complicated past she spent decades surviving. One represents where the crown is going. The other represents everything it had to make peace with to get here. That contrast does not need a single accusation to create tension. It creates itself. And so, the move makes a colder kind of sense. Lock the house into a trust now, while a friendly king still reigns, and place it on her children's side, beyond the easy reach of whatever rules the next reign might write. William never had to say her name. If those future rules ever come, they will speak for him. A different name dragged the whole monarchy into the conversation. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, once Prince Andrew, Duke of York. And for months, his living arrangements at Royal Lodge had turned into a national argument about who pays for royal homes, who lives in them, and on what terms. That argument did not stay contained to one man, because here is what happens once the public starts examining royal property. People stop asking about one house and start asking about all of them. Who holds the lease? Who covers the upkeep? Who quietly benefits while ordinary families watch their own rents climb? Once that question opens, it does not close politely. It spreads to every door with a crown above it. And that is exactly the moment Ray Milhouse surfaced in the headlines. The two stories are not legally connected. One is a duke under public pressure over a grace and favor residence. The other is a queen restructuring a private home she paid for herself. But timing does not care about legal distinctions. To a suspicious public, every royal property became part of the same moral question: who gets what, and why should anyone else have to pay attention to the bill? So pause and ask yourself something honestly, and put it in the comments below. Do you think the public has a right to know exactly how every royal home is owned and paid for? Or is some of it genuinely private? There is no easy answer, and that tension is the whole point. The pressure in this chapter is not a person. It is distrust itself. And distrust is the one force the monarchy cannot simply buy its way out of. The institution survives on a strange balance. Enough mystery to feel royal, enough openness to stay accepted. Tip too far toward secrecy and the public turns. Tip too far toward exposure and the magic dies. Ray Milhouse is private, but it is still attached to a queen. And in a climate where the public has started counting royal houses, nothing attached to a crown stays fully private for long. The real danger was never that Camilla owned a house. The danger was that the public had started counting them. The internet smelled blood and went hunting. Within days of the land registry story breaking, the quiet trust transfer of Ray Milhouse stopped being a property story online and started becoming something bigger, darker, and far more international in people's imaginations. Some users went looking for hidden companies. Others searched for nominee structures and shell arrangements. A few asked whether the second name on the deed, the financier Jake Irwin, pointed toward some secret offshore web, money moving through jurisdictions where nobody could trace it. The theories grew louder with every share. A queen, a financier, a quiet transfer. To a certain kind of viewer, that adds up to one word: cover-up. And here is where serious storytelling has to step in and slow everything down. Because a rumor can be dramatic without being true. A document can be powerful without being criminal.
Prince Harry intends to use the Invictus Games to get revenge on Queen Camilla and in turn his father, King Charles.
The fact that two names replaced one on a registry is real. The leap from there to offshore secrets is not evidence. It is appetite. People want the biggest possible version of the story, and the internet is happy to feed that hunger whether or not the facts support it. So look at what the reporting actually showed. GB News indicated that Harry Lopes and Jake Irwin appear to hold the title as trustees, not beneficial owners. That is not the architecture of a scandal. That is the architecture of estate planning, the same legal tool used by countless wealthy families to decide who controls an asset before anyone dies, and to keep that asset inside the bloodline. And that is the real twist, the cold one that no rumor predicted. The most dramatic explanation is not a hidden fortune in some island vault. The most dramatic explanation is quieter and, in its own way, heavier. Legal protection, family planning, and a queen preparing for a future she cannot fully control. The rumor was loud. It filled comment sections and racked up views. But the quiet legal move was the more dangerous one, because it was real. Strip away the crown for a second and look at the woman. For most of her public life, Camilla was not adored. She was the name attached to one of the most painful chapters in modern royal history. She was blamed, mocked, and judged by millions of people who had never met her. For years, the idea that she would ever become queen seemed impossible, even offensive, to large parts of the British public. And through all of it, she had Ray Mill House. This is the emotional center of the whole story, so let it land. While the press tore at her, while crowds favored a different woman's memory, while the institution slowly decided whether it could ever fully accept her, this house in Lecoq stayed hers. It was the house from before the coronation, before the acceptance, before the crown finally, grudgingly, claimed her as its own. Royal biographers have long noted how slow and uneven her journey toward acceptance was. It was not clean, it was not universally celebrated, but it was real, and it took decades. She did not arrive at the throne on a wave of public love. She arrived through endurance. So picture what this house meant. It was not just property. It was proof that she had survived. It was the garden she called the best therapy in the world. It was the rooms where her children grew up, where her daughter married, where she went to breathe after Queen Elizabeth II died, and the whole country went quiet with grief. And here is the human truth underneath all the legal language. Sometimes people do not protect a place because they love money. They protect it because it is the last corner of the world where their life still feels like their own. That is what makes the transfer ache, even for people who never warmed to her. To sign away the legal title to that house, even into a trust, even for her own children, is to admit something. That the safe place might not stay safe on its own. That endurance alone may not be enough for what is coming. If Ray Mill House was her escape, the place she ran to when everything else demanded performance, then why, after all these years, did the escape itself suddenly need protecting?
But I trust William's judgment here implicitly. I think William wants to clean house. You know, in order to save this monarchy, it has got to be slimmed down to the bare bones, and reputational liabilities must be dispensed with.
5 separate pressures arrived at one country gate at the same time. That is why this story refuses to sit still as a simple property update. It is not one scandal. It is 5 forces meeting at a single point, and Ray Mill House is where they collide. Pressure 1 is Camilla's own need for privacy, for one place outside the reach of the institution. Pressure 2 is King Charles III's instinct to protect her. The £3 million he spent on the old mill next door, private funds laid down to keep her gate quiet. Pressure 3 is William, Prince of Wales, and the leaner, more modern monarchy many royal watchers expect him to build. A reign less forgiving of arrangements that are hard to explain. Pressure 4 is the public's growing anger over royal privilege, sharpened by the Royal Lodge fight, turning every royal home into a moral question. Pressure 5 is the quietest and the heaviest, the fear that the next reign will not protect the present queen the way the current one does. Set those 5 forces side by side, and the trust transfer stops looking random. It looks like a decision made by someone reading the room with clear eyes. While a friendly king still reigns, while he can still shield her, move the house onto the children's side. Lock it into a structure. Do it quietly, before the rules change and the climate hardens. From a public relations standpoint, the official story remains calm and simple. Long-planned family arrangements agreed years ago, nothing unusual, and that may be the complete truth. There is no public proof of any wrongdoing, and this story does not claim there is. But the timing tells its own story. People who feel fully safe do not quietly restructure the ownership of their most personal home. They hold on, the way Camilla held on for nearly 30 years through every storm. She stopped holding on now, at this exact moment, for a reason. Ray Milhouse did not reveal what Camilla lost. It revealed what the royal family may already know is coming. The crown is already planning for the day it changes hands. Not on a balcony, not in a press release, not with trumpets or proclamations, privately, through property, through trusts, through careful names added to quiet documents while the public looks elsewhere. That is the truth Ray Milhouse exposes. Strip away the rumors, the offshore theories, the headlines screaming about a 48-hour sale, and what remains is something steadier and more revealing. The British monarchy is preparing for life after King Charles III before that life has arrived. The succession is not just a future event, it is a present project, already underway, written in legal title rather than ceremony. And so, the house comes full circle. It began as Camilla's symbol of independence, the home she bought herself, the proof she had a life outside the institution. Now it stands for something else entirely. It stands for the monarchy's quiet anxiety about its own future. The Queen still has her crown, the King still holds the throne, William still waits in line, Catherine still stands steady beside him. But behind the gates in Wiltshire, the shape of the next reign is already being negotiated, one signature at a time. There is a lesson buried in all of it, and it reaches far past palace walls. Power teaches people to guard the obvious things, the jewels, the titles, the grand houses. But the wisest people learn to guard the one thing power cannot easily hand back once it is gone, a place where they can still be human. That is what this story was always about. Not a sale, not a scandal. A woman trying to keep one corner of her life her own inside a system designed to own everything. And that is why Ray Milhouse may be remembered not as the home Camilla gave away, but as the first quiet sign that the next reign had already entered the room. If this story moved you, if it made you see the people behind the crown a little differently, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. The next royal story we uncover may surprise you even more than this one. And before you go, share your own thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be exactly what helps someone else see this in a whole new light. Because the gates have closed again in Wiltshire, but the real question is just beginning.